Curiosity is natural to the soul of man. Those are among the very first words that Daniel Boone left to history, and in the summer of 1769, that curiosity carried him to the top of a ridge in a country that no man of this nation had ever mapped. He looked out and he later described what he saw. I had gained the summit of a commanding ridge, and looking round with astonishing delight, beheld the ample plains, the beauteous tracts below. Below him lay Kentucky, and behind him lay everything he had ever known. And on the 7th day of June in 1769, 257 years ago this week, Daniel Boone became one of the first recorded Americans to walk through the Cumberland Gap and into the heart of a continent. He was born in 1734 to a Quaker family in Pennsylvania, near present-day Reading. And when his family broke with the Quakers, they moved south, and Daniel came up along the Yadkin River in North Carolina. But no settlement could ever hold him. From boyhood, he was a natural woodsman, a hunter, a trapper, a surveyor, a man who would vanish into the forest for months at a time, charting land that no European had ever seen. And at 20 years old, he marched in one of the great disasters of the French and Indian War, the Braddock Campaign. It was a doomed British attempt to drive the French from the Ohio Valley. And among the men who survived that bloody day was a young Virginian named George Washington. Two men who would each, in his own way, help carve a nation out of the wilderness. I'm Dan McKnight. I've spent the better part of 2 decades in the United States Marine Corps, the Army, and the Idaho Army National Guard, including a combat tour in Afghanistan's Pesh River Valley. I have slept on the hard ground a long way from home, and I felt that pull that a man feels towards the far side of the next ridge. So when I read about Daniel Boone, I don't just see a face on a coonskin cap or a name in a history book. I see a restless, God-given drive that built this country, the conviction that there is always something worth seeing over the horizon, and that a free man has every right to go and find it. Boone entered the bluegrass valleys of Kentucky and stayed for 2 years hunting and trapping. He called it a second paradise. And in 1775, he founded Boonesboro, the second permanent settlement in Kentucky. And when the Revolution came, he took up arms to defend it. History would brand him an Indian fighter. It was a title that he is said to have despised. The truth is much more complicated and more interesting. Boone admired America's first people, and he had lived among the Shawnee, who adopted him as a son and gave him a name of their own. He recalled their affection ran so deep that they refused to give him up, even when offered a fortune for his release. Now, I won't hand you a fairy tale. The same trails that Boone blazed carried hundreds of thousands of settlers west, and that westward tide pressed hard against the native nations who had walked this land for thousands of years before him. That's the harder, fuller truth of the American frontier, and Boone himself lived right inside that tension, a man who fought native warriors and also called them his brothers, a man who opened a country he could never quite hold on to for himself. Because here's the part of that the legend leaves out about Daniel Boone. He was not a rich man. He opened the way for others to make their fortunes, and he lost his own again and again to tangled land claims and to lawyers who outmaneuvered him. I have opened the way for others to make their fortunes, he said, but a fortune for myself was not what I was after. And in 1799, broke and disillusioned, Boone left Kentucky for good and settled in Missouri, then Spanish territory, 4 years before our young nation would buy it in the Louisiana Purchase. And still, the wilderness called. Past the age of 75, crippled by arthritis, but unwilling to sit still, he set out on a long hunt up the Missouri River, reaching by some accounts as far as the Yellowstone country, near the edge of what is now Montana and the Dakotas. Think about that. An old man in pain who had already seen more of this continent than almost anybody else alive, and he still wanted to see what was around the next bend. When Daniel Boone died in 1820, he was 85 years old and already a legend in his own lifetime. He'd been written up by biographers, sought out by historians. His name was a synonym for the American frontier itself. In less than 1 month, the republic that Daniel Boone walked and fought for and helped to settle turns 250 years old. We live in a world he could not have imagined, a world of screens and signals where the whole of human knowledge sits in our pocket and the next ridge is just a satellite photo. And there's a danger in that. A danger is that we let our gadgets do the exploring for us, that we trade the pioneer spirit for the path of least resistance, that we forget how to wonder what's over the horizon. But that spirit is not gone. It's the same drive that took us across the Appalachians, across the Mississippi, across the Great Plains, and then off this planet entirely to the surface of the moon. It's the curiosity that is natural to the soul of man. It built America. And that same Daniel Boone intuition, that refusal to stand still, that hunger to set a new course is what will carry her forward. So this week, as we mark 257 years since a Quaker's son first looked over Kentucky, let's resolve to be worthy of the trail that he blazed. Let's keep exploring. Let's keep building. Let's keep believing that there's something worth finding over the next ridge. Liberty is our legacy. Let's be worthy of it. God bless America and happy 250th birthday.